Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. Victoria derails Phyllis and Kane's plans. Jack deals with family matters while Nick and Noah contemplate their coming move. Victoria fights to save Newman Enterprises from Kane and Phyllis, while Noah to keep Nick from making a mistake with Matt Clark. Plus, Jack accuses Billy of taking advantage. Jack's focus has been on Jabot and Victor lately. But the Abbott primogenitor switches his attention from business to family matters. When Billy starts to show signs of reckless jest again, it's time for Jack to step by. Sally's is getting concerned about Billy's jest, especially his station towards the Newmans. When Kane offers Billy the occasion to run Chancellor, it'll be the perfect way to stick it to Victor. But not if Jack has his say-so. As anticipated, pressures incontinently arise during the sisters' battle. Billy declares he's not taking advantage of anyone, but Jack says, "It sure as hell looks that way to me." Can Jack keep his family from making a big mistake? Or is Billy about to lose everything in his rearmost downfall? Not so fast, Can. Speaking of Kane, he and Phyllis are on board the train, celebrating their palm. They got one over on the great Victor, and now they're about to be the top tykes in Genoa City's business quarter. Kane proudly proclaims that Newman Enterprises is basically theirs, and they just need to take control of the company. "Over my dead body," Victoria says as she enters the train. The Newman queen is furious with Phyllis and Kane for stealing her family's company, and won't hold back in her diatribe. Although Phyllis and Kane might have the upper hand now, Victoria isn't going to let them get down with this. However, that's nothing compared to Victoria, who's just as ruthless as her pater, if they allowed Victor was a tough adversary. At Sharon's cabin, Noah and Nick are dealing with another problem. After reacquiring Matt Clark from Jack, Nick and Noah are now left wondering what to do. As Matt lies unconscious in Nick's box, upset Noah asks if Nick plans to kill Matt. Unknown to them, Sienna is wiretapping on their discussion and becomes terrified at Nick's protestation. "That man needs to vanish, and there's no bone who's going to talk me out of that," Nick tells his son. Will Sienna beat Nick to the punch and take care of Matt herself? Or will Sienna ail Nick's plan by helping Matt escape? Victoria derails Phyllis and Kane's plans, explodes into a high-stakes showdown that ripples across Genoa City, touching every corner of power, family, and treason, as alliances fracture and despair pushes everyone closer to the edge. Because while Kane and Phyllis believe they're riding the palm train straight into history, they've hectically undervalued how far Victoria Newman will go when her family's heritage is hovered, and that misapprehension may prove fatal to their grand design. Victoria's fury is stormy, stoned by times of fighting in the fosses of Newman Enterprises, and when she storms onto that train with fire in her eyes and sword in her chine, it becomes sorrowfully clear that this isn't Victor Newman's war. Presently it's hers. Phyllis smirks at first, confident in the influence she and Kane have clawed together through secrets, sabotage, and ruthless maneuvering, while Kane basks in his vision of triumph, bravely declaring that Newman Enterprises is formerly theirs in everything but name. But Victoria cuts through their arrogance with a single icy protestation that stops the festivity cold wave. Over her dead body, she tells them, and in that moment the power dynamic shifts, because Victoria doesn't rant like Victor or posture like Jack. She calculates, and she destroys still. She lays out exactly how their supposed palm is riddled with cracks, how shareholders are formerly wavering, how controllers are circling, and how the very alliances Kane and Phyllis calculate on are erected on fear rather than fidelity, and fear, she reminds them, evaporates the moment a stronger force appears. Phyllis bristles, firing back with her trademark venom, criminating Victoria of riding her father's coattails and pretending to be a queen when she's nothing further than a privileged pawn. But Victoria doesn't blench, because unlike Phyllis, she doesn't need blessing or applause, she needs control, and she's formally reclaiming it piece by piece. Kane tries to intermediate, trying to play interceder while subtly situating himself as the true architect behind the preemption, but Victoria sees right through him, calling out his ambition, his resentment toward Victor, and his amenability to burn every ground in Genoa City just to prove he belongs at the top. She warns him that power taken through business no way lasts, and when it collapses, it takes everything with it, including the people foolish enough to celebrate too soon. As the train barrels forward, the battle becomes emblematic of the collision course they're all on, because Victoria isn't just fighting for a company, she's fighting for her family's name, her children's future, and her own identity, and she'll not lose. Meanwhile, across city, Jack Abbott finds himself forced to shift his focus down from commercial warfare and back to the messy, painful reality of family, because while Jabot and Victor have dominated his attention, Billy's decreasingly reckless jest sends alarm bells ringing that Jack can no longer ignore. Jack sees the signs each too easily, the impulsive opinions, the slightly concealed bitterness, the dangerous spark in Billy's eyes whenever Victor's name comes up, and he knows exactly where this road leads, because he's walked it ahead, watched Billy tone-destruct before, and buried the emotional wreckage after every fall. When Jack confronts Billy, the pressure between them is immediate and explosive, times of undetermined resentment boiling over as Billy insists he's eventually in control, eventually making moves on his own terms, while Jack counters that it looks exactly like another helical dressed up as ambition. The blameworthiness that Billy is taking advantage of openings that could destroy him hits hard, especially when Jack brings up Kane's offer to put Billy in charge of Chancellor, framing it not as a gift but as an armament aimed exactly at Victor Newman. Sally's enterprises echo in the background, her growing apprehension about Billy's preoccupation with sticking it to the Newmans adding weight to Jack's fears, because Sally sees what Billy refuses to admit, that this isn't about business or heritage, it's about vengeance, and vengeance has a way of consuming everything differently. Billy switches out, criminating Jack of no way believing in him, of always assuming the worst, and insists he's not being manipulated by Kane or anyone differently. But Jack's response is severely honest and devastatingly simple. It sure as hell looks that way to me. The words hang heavy between them, because Jack isn't trying to win an argument, he's trying to save his family, and he knows that if Billy accepts Kane's offer, he may lose not just his company, but his family, his relationship with Sally, and whatever fragile stability he's managed to make. The question isn't whether Jack can stop Billy, it's whether Billy indeed wants to be stopped, or if he's formally abnegated himself to another spectacular downfall. As these battles rage, a far darker dilemma unfolds at Sharon's cabin, where Nick and Noah grapple with a decision that could shatter what's left wing of their souls. After reacquiring Matt Clark from Jack, they find themselves gaping into the ocean, with Matt unconscious in the box of Nick's auto, a silent memorial of how far Nick has formerly crossed the line. Noah's fear is raw and palpable as he asks the question neither of them wants to answer: does Nick plan to kill Matt? Nick's response is chilling in its certainty, declaring that Matt needs to vanish and that nothing and no bone will talk him out of it, revealing just how deeply cornered he feels and how dangerously far he's willing to go to cover his family. What Nick doesn't realize is that Sienna is hearkening, hidden just out of sight, her heart pounding as she absorbs every word, because Nick's protestation doesn't sound like a barranca, it sounds like a death judgment. Sienna's mind races as she weighs her options, torn between fidelity, fear, and the consummation that if Nick follows through, there's no coming back from it, not for him, not for Noah, and not for any of them. She knows Matt Clark is a liability, a ticking time lemon of secrets and pitfalls, but she also knows that murder will destroy the very people she's trying to cover. And as Nick brands himself for what he believes must be done, Sienna faces an intimidating choice of her own. Will she act first and take care of Matt herself, believing she's sparing Nick from getting a killer, or will she intimately help Matt escape, derailing Nick's plan and risking his wrath in the process? Every plot converges on the same brutal verity in Genoa City: power is no way free, fidelity is always tested, and every move comes with a price. Victoria's war with Phyllis and Kane threatens to reshape the commercial geography ever. Jack's battle to save Billy could end in heartache, and Nick's descent into moral darkness may bring him the veritably family he's trying to cover, because in this megacity, the most dangerous miscalculations aren't made by adversaries, they're made by the people who believe they're doing the right thing. The fallout from Victoria's dramatic entrance on that train doesn't end when the doors slam shut behind her, it only intensifies, spreading like a shockwave through every fragile alliance Phyllis and Kane allowed they had secured, because Victoria doesn't storm in just to vent her rage, she arrives with bills, strategy, and a nipping calm that rattles indeed someone as battle-hardened as Phyllis Summers, who suddenly realizes this isn't Victor's predictable bluster or Jack's moral lectures, but commodity far more dangerous, a Newman who has nothing left to lose and everything to prove. As the train rattles along the tracks, Victoria totally dismantles their confidence, pointing out how Kane's rushed pushes have left paper trails controllers will dribble over, how Phyllis's habit of burning islands has still united adversaries who would love nothing further than to see her fall, and how their so-called palm depends entirely on Victor staying down, and Victor Newman, as she reminds them with a razor-sharp smile, no way stays down for long. Kane bristles, averring Victor's health issues and insulation have eventually weakened him beyond recovery, but Victoria counters that undervaluing her father has been the downfall of smarter men than Kane Ashby, and she makes it sorrowfully clear that while Victor may be temporarily sidelined, the Newman machine is veritably important alive, and she's now at the controls. Phyllis switches out, criminating Victoria of trying to scarify them into backing off, but Victoria leans in close, her voice dropping as she warns that she isn't then to negotiate or maintain, she's then to declare war, and the battleground will be one Phyllis and Kane are spectacularly unrehearsed for. By the time Victoria exits the train, she's planted seeds of mistrustfulness that incontinently begin to sow, leaving Kane gaping out the window with a clenched jaw and Phyllis masking her apprehension behind forced bravado, because for the first time since this scheme began, they're both forced to defy the possibility that they've awakened commodity far worse than Victor Newman ever was. Across city, Jack Abbott's battle with Billy refuses to resolve itself neatly, rather declining into a raw, emotionally charged reckoning that drags times of resentment and disappointment into the open, as Jack presses harder, demanding to know why Billy is so hopeless to hitch his future to Kane's reckless campaign when history has shown exactly how these alliances end. Billy fires back that Jack has always played it safe, always chosen respectability over threat, and accuses him of projecting his own fears onto Billy's intentions, but Jack refuses to back down, reminding his family that ambition without restraint is just tone destruction with a proper name. When Jack brings up Sally's growing concern, Billy stiffens, easily soaked by the consummation that the woman he loves is starting to see the same warning signs Jack does, and for a brief moment, mistrustfulness flickers across his face. Jack seizes that opening, prompting Billy to decelerate down, to walk down from Kane's offer before it traps him in a power struggle he can't win, but Billy's pride flares, and he insists that running Chancellor would eventually put him on equal footing with Victor Newman, eventually silence every voice that's ever called him a screw-up. Jack's response is devastating in its honesty, beating Victor won't fix what's broken inside you, and hearing it said out loud forces Billy to defy the verity he's been running from, that this fight isn't about heritage or success, it's about proving his worth to a world he's convinced has formally written him off. As their argument reaches a boiling point, Jack issues a warning that lands like a blast. If Billy goes through with this, he's on his own, not out of atrocity, but because Jack refuses to enable another destructive curl, indeed if it means standing by and watching his family fall. Meanwhile, Sally's anxiety deepens as she watches Billy retreat further into himself, his preoccupation with the Newmans surpassing their relationship, and she's left wondering if love will be enough to pull him back from the point, or if she's about to lose him to the same demons that have claimed him ahead. At Sharon's cabin, the pressure between Nick and Noah becomes unsupportable, the air thick with fear and implied guilt as Noah pleads with his father to review, reminding him that crossing this line will hang him ever, but Nick's resoluteness hardens, fueled by times of guarding his family at any cost and the belief that Matt Clark represents a trouble that will no way truly vanish unless it's permanently silenced. Noah's voice breaks as he begs Nick to suppose about Faith, about Sharon, about the man he wants to be flashed back as, but Nick shuts him down, averring that occasionally doing the right thing means living with unsupportable consequences, indeed if it destroys you outside. Hidden hard, Sienna listens in horror, her hands shaking as she realizes just how close Nick is to getting someone he can no way come back from, and she knows that whatever choice she makes in the coming many moments will change all their lives ever. As Nick storms off to make medications, Sienna still approaches Noah, her face blench as she confesses what she eavesdropped, and together they scramble to figure out how to stop Nick without exposing themselves or pushing him further over the edge. Noah suggests going to Sharon, believing his mama might be the only one who can reach Nick, but Sienna hesitates, alarmed that involving Sharon could escalate everything and put her in peril, especially if Nick feels betrayed. As they argue in hushed tones, Matt stirs in the box, a faint moan cutting through the night like a warning temptress, and Sienna freezes, realizing time has run out. Acting on pure instinct, she opens the box just enough to slip Matt some water, brooding that she doesn't know how much longer she can cover him, but that he needs to be ready to run if she gives the signal, because Nick Newman is no longer pretending. Back on the commercial battleground, Victoria wastes no time turning her words into action, marshalling pious directors, still rallying wavering shareholders, and doing just enough information to destabilize Kane and Phyllis's instigation without revealing her full hand, proving she's learned well from her father's playbook while enriching it into commodity sharper and more precise. Kane senses the shift nearly incontinently as calls go unanswered and promises suddenly come with conditions. And while Phyllis insists it's nothing further than temporary turbulence, her eyes betray the fear that Victoria's influence is spreading faster than they anticipated. When Victor himself eventually stirs, weakened but far from defeated, Victoria missions him on everything that's happened, and though he can slightly muster the strength to sit upright, the pride in his eyes is unmistakable as he realizes his son has stepped completely into her power. Victor warns her not to underrate Phyllis's capacity for chaos or Kane's despair, but he also makes it clear that he trusts Victoria to finish what she started, an end of the arsonist that cements her part as the true force behind Newman Enterprises. As night falls over Genoa City, every player stands at a crossroads, ignorant of just how close everything is to crumbling. Phyllis and Kane cleave to their vision of control, eyeless to the fact that Victoria is formally dismembering their conglomerate from within. Jack wrestles with the pain of potentially losing Billy to his own worst impulses, indeed as he braces himself for the fallout to come. Sally brands herself for a delicate discussion that could either save her relationship or end it. Nick teeters on the edge of an unrecoverable act, induced it's the only way to cover his family, while Noah and Sienna scramble to stop him before it's too late. And brewing over it all is the creepy question that Genoa City no way stops asking when power, love, and fidelity collide: who'll survive the wreckage, and who'll be crushed beneath it? Because as every one of them is about to learn, the most dangerous moves aren't the bones made in wrathfulness, but the bones made in absolute certainty that there's no other choice. As the night deepens and Genoa City glows under a robe of secrets and stewing rage, the consequences of every reckless oath and rumored trouble begin to close in, because this is the hour when resoluteness hardens into action and vacillation becomes its own kind of treason. Victoria's crusade against Phyllis and Kane accelerates with ruthless effectiveness, her moves so precise that by the time her adversaries smell the full compass of what she's done, the damage is formerly unrecoverable. Crucial investors suddenly demand exigency meetings, citing new enterprises about leadership stability, while legal brigades still flag irregularities in Kane's recent accessions, creating a fog of mistrustfulness that suffocates instigation and erodes confidence. Phyllis, ever the fighter, tries to spin the narrative, calling in favors and unleashing her hand charm-laced intimidation, but indeed she can feel the ground shifting beneath her bases, because Victoria isn't playing defense, she's tensing a mesh, and every pull is deliberate. Kane's frustration mounts as his vision of triumph begins to crack, and in rare moments of silence, he wonders if his hunger to outdo Victor has dazed him to the cost, yet pride keeps him moving forward, induced that backing down now would mean admitting he no way truly belonged at the top. Their cooperation strains under pressure, subtle blame creeping into their exchanges as Phyllis questions Kane's timing and Kane bristles at Phyllis's partiality for chaos, each intimately stewing that the other might come the liability that brings everything crashing down. At Jabot, Jack sits alone in his office long after the structure has voided, gaping out at the megacity he's helped shape, visited by the echo of his battle with Billy and the knowledge that doing the right thing doesn't always feel righteous. He renewals Billy's defiance, Sally's implied solicitude, and his own claim, wondering if he's pushed too hard or not hard enough, because loving Billy has always meant walking a tightrope between support and restraint. Jack knows he can't control his family's choices, but he also knows the fallout will land exactly on his shoulders if Billy tone destructs again, dragging the Abbott name through another public reckoning. When Sally eventually gathers the courage to defy Billy, her voice trembles with a blend of fear and resolve as she asks him point-blank whether this fight with the Newmans matters more to him than their future, and Billy, caught off guard by the rawness of her plea, struggles to answer actually without exposing the instability driving him. For a moment, it seems like he might step back, might admit that he's alarmed of being ordinary, of always standing in Victor Newman's shadow, but also Kane's offer looms large again, spangling with the pledge of confirmation, and Billy's silence speaks louder than any concession. Sally leaves the discussion with gashes in her eyes and dread in her heart, realizing that love may not be enough to save someone who's determined to prove commodity at all costs. Meanwhile, the situation with Matt Clark reaches a breaking point as Nick's resoluteness transforms into grim medication, every step he takes fueled by the belief that this is the only way to cover his family from an endless cycle of pitfalls and retribution. Noah follows him, despair etched across his face, contending one last time for his father to stop, reminding him that violence doesn't abolish peril, it multiplies it, but Nick's eyes are distant, fixed on a future he believes he's formerly lost. Sienna, torn between fear and heart, makes a decision that could bring her everything, still slipping Matt the keys and brooding directions for escape, her hands shaking as she urges him to run the moment he gets the chance. When Matt eventually stumbles free under the cover of darkness, confusion giving way to fear, Sienna watches him vanish into the night, knowing she's just